If you have ever followed someone into the night, then you need to hear this carefully. There are rules, old rules passed down in whispers from elders who have seen things they could never explain. Rules that sound simple, almost foolish, until the night comes when they are the only thing standing between you and something you cannot escape. The first rule is this: if you wake up and the person beside you is gone, do not move. The second, do not call their name. And the last, the one people break the most, do not go looking for them. Because sometimes, the person who left your side is not going where you think they are. And sometimes, what answers you when you call is not the person you know. In the village of Uguma, these warnings were not just stories told to scare children. They were spoken with weight, with meaning. Elders would sit by the fire at night, their voices low, their faces serious, as they told of things that walked when the moon hid its face. They spoke of shadows that moved on their own, of voices that sounded familiar, but were not, of people who left their homes at night and returned different. Or worse, never returned at all. Most people listened. Most people obeyed. Doors were locked early. Lamps were put out before midnight. And when the night grew too quiet, no one dared to step outside, not even for a moment. Because in Uguma, the darkness was not empty. It was watching. It was waiting. And it had patience. But not everyone believed these things. Some thought the stories were just that, stories. Old tales shaped by fear, passed down from a time when people did not understand the world around them. Some believed nothing could happen to them. And others simply let curiosity become stronger than caution. Chisum was not a reckless girl. She was not the kind to disobey her elders or wander into danger for no reason. She was quiet, thoughtful, and careful with her steps. The kind of person who listened more than she spoke. But even the most careful people can make one mistake. Just one. And sometimes, one mistake is all it takes. It started on a night like any other. The village had gone to sleep. The cooking fires had burned low. The air was still, heavy with the silence that only comes when everyone has finally closed their eyes. Inside a small clay house, two sisters lay side by side on their mats. The darkness wrapped around them gently, like a blanket. Everything was normal. Everything was safe. Until it wasn't. Because sometime in the middle of that quiet night, one of them woke up, and the space beside her was empty. That was the moment the rules should have mattered. That was the moment she should have stayed still. But she didn't. And before the night was over, Chisum would follow someone she loved into a darkness she did not understand. A darkness that was not meant for the living. And by the time she realized the truth, it was almost too late. Uguma was the kind of village where life moved slowly, but nothing ever went unnoticed. The earth there was deep red, soft under bare feet, and warm under the afternoon sun. Narrow paths curved between houses built from clay and thatched leaves, each one standing firm against time and weather. Tall trees surrounded the village like quiet guardians, their branches stretching wide, their leaves whispering softly whenever the wind passed through. In the mornings, Uguma came alive with simple, familiar sounds. Roosters crowed before the sun fully rose. Women swept their compounds with long brooms, the rhythmic shh-itch echoing across the air. Men prepared for the day's work, their voices low but steady. And children ran about, laughing, chasing one another, their feet kicking up small clouds of red dust. It was not a rich village, but it was a good one. People shared what they had. They greeted each other by name. And when something happened, good or bad, the whole village knew before the sun set. Nothing stayed hidden in Uguma. At the far end of the village stood a modest compound, neat and well cared for despite its simplicity. That was where Mama Adaku lived with her two daughters. Mama Adaku was known by everyone, not because she was loud or important, but because she was strong. She woke before the first rooster crowed, long before the sky even thought of turning light. By the time others stepped outside, she had already swept the compound, fetched water, and begun preparing food for the day. Her hands were rough from years of work. Her back often ached, but she never complained. People respected her, not out of fear, but out of quiet admiration. She is a woman who carries her home with both hands, the elders would say. And she did. After her husband passed many years ago, Mama Adaku became everything to her daughters: mother, father, protector, and provider. She raised them with discipline, but also with love that showed in the smallest things: the way she saved the best portion of food for them, the way she checked on them at night, the way her eyes softened whenever she looked at them. Her daughters were her world. And yet, those two girls could not have been more different. People often joked about it. How can twins look like strangers? They would laugh. But beneath the laughter, there was always a hint of curiosity. Because in Uguma, twins were believed to share more than just a face. They shared a bond, a connection deeper than ordinary siblings. So when two twins grew up so different, in looks, in behavior, in the way the world treated them, people noticed. They watched. They talked. But no one knew just how important that difference would become. No one knew that inside that quiet compound, a story was already beginning to unfold. A story that would soon stretch beyond the red earth of Uguma and into the dark woods no one dared to enter. For now, everything still looked normal. The sun rose. The village breathed. Life went on. But sometimes, the most dangerous stories don't begin with noise or chaos. They begin quietly. So quietly, you don't realize anything is wrong until it's already too late. That night began like every other night in Uguma. The sun sank slowly behind the tall trees, leaving behind a soft orange glow that faded into deep blue. One by one, cooking fires dimmed, and the smell of roasted food disappeared into the cool evening air. Voices grew quieter. Laughter faded. Doors closed. Soon, the village was wrapped in silence. Inside Mama Adaku's house, the day had ended, as it always did. The girls ate, cleaned up, and spread their mats on the floor. Mama Adaku lay down last, as usual, after checking that everything was in place. "Sleep well," she said softly. And not long after, the house fell still. Chisum lay on her mat, her body tired from the day's work. Her eyes grew heavy, her breathing slow. The darkness around her felt calm, familiar, safe. But sometime deep into the night, something pulled her from sleep. At first, she didn't move. She lay there quietly, her eyes still closed, listening. Then she heard it. A soft sound. Creak! The wooden door. Opening. Slowly. Carefully. Chisum's eyes opened just a little. Her heart began to beat faster. Through the dim darkness, she could make out a shadow moving near the door. Ephelma. She was already standing, wrapping a dark cloth around her head. Her movements were quiet, too quiet. Not the careless movements of someone stepping out for fresh air or water. No. This was different. She looked toward their mother, then toward Chisum. Chisum quickly closed her eyes, pretending to be asleep. She slowed her breathing, keeping it steady, even. For a moment, everything was still. Then, soft footsteps across the clay floor. the faint sound of fabric brushing against itself. And finally, the door opening just enough to let her slip out, then closing again. Silence. Chisum's eyes opened fully now. She sat up slowly, her mind racing. What is she doing? No one in Uguma walked outside at that hour. Not without reason. And certainly not without telling someone. The night was not a place for wandering. Everyone knew that. It was a rule spoken so often it had become part of life itself. The elders always said, "The night belongs to things you cannot see." Chisum swallowed hard. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe Afelma just needed air. Or maybe she couldn't sleep. Yes, that had to be it. But even as she tried to convince herself, something inside her refused to settle. Her chest felt tight. Her ears strained, listening for any sound outside. Time passed slowly. Too slowly. Every small noise, the rustle of leaves, the distant cry of a night bird, felt louder than it should. And then, the door opened again. Softly. Carefully. Chisum quickly lay back down, closing her eyes once more. She listened. Afelma stepped inside. Her movements were calm now, unhurried, satisfied. Chisum could feel it, even without looking. There was something different in the air. Something wrong. Afelma lay down beside her. For a moment, there was silence. Then Chisum heard it. A faint sound. A quiet smile. Not the kind shared with others, but the kind kept for secrets. Morning came like nothing had happened. The sun rose. The village stirred. Life continued. But Chisum was not the same. As she swept the compound later that morning, her mind replayed everything she had seen. The careful steps. The silence. The secret smile. It didn't feel right. It didn't make sense. And the more she thought about it, the more one question refused to leave her. Where did Afelma go last night? She glanced toward the doorway of their house. Afelma was inside, humming softly to herself. Like everything was normal. Like nothing had happened. But Chisum knew what she saw. And deep in her chest, a quiet unease began to grow. Because sometimes, the first sign that something is wrong is not loud or obvious. It is small, silent, easy to ignore. But if you pay attention, it is enough to tell you one thing. A secret has begun. Morning in Guma usually felt warm and familiar. The sun rose gently over the trees, casting golden light across the red earth. Women stepped out to sweep their compounds. Children's laughter returned to the air. The village breathed back to life, as if the night had taken nothing from it. But that morning, something felt different. Chisum noticed it the moment Afelma stepped outside. She paused mid-sweep, her broom hovering just above the ground. Afelma looked radiant. More than usual. Her skin seemed to catch the sunlight in a way that almost glowed, and around her neck was something Chisum had never seen before. A bead. Deep red. Not the dull red of clay or dyed fabric, but a rich, glowing red that shimmered like fire when the light touched it. It was beautiful. Too beautiful. Mama Adaku stepped out just then, wiping her hands on her wrapper. The moment her eyes landed on Afelma, she stopped. "My daughter!" she exclaimed, stepping closer. "Where did you get that bead? It is so fine." Afelma lifted her chin slightly, a proud smile spreading across her face. She touched the bead gently, as if reminding herself it was real. "A kind trader gave it to me at the market yesterday," she said smoothly. Chisum's grip tightened on her broom. Yesterday, she had been there, from morning until evening. They had walked side by side through every corner of the market. No trader had called Ephelma aside. No one had given her anything, not even the smallest fruit. Chisum's heart began to beat faster. That was not true. She stepped forward slowly, her eyes fixed on the bead. Up close, it looked even stranger. The red seemed too deep, almost alive, and for a brief second, Chisum thought she saw it pulse, just once, like something breathing beneath the surface. A chill ran down her spine. "Ephelma," she said quietly, keeping her voice low so their mother wouldn't hear. "I was with you all day yesterday. No one gave you that." Ephelma's smile faded. Slowly. Her eyes shifted to Chisum, and something cold settled in them. "You were dreaming," she replied, her voice flat. "I heard you last night," Chisum pressed gently. "You left the house. Where did you go?" For a moment, there was silence. Then Ephelma's expression hardened completely. "You are jealous," she said. The words came sharp, like a slap. "Because no one gives you fine things, you are now watching me and making up stories in your head." Chisum blinked, taken aback. I did not go anywhere," Ephelma cut in, her tone colder now. "And you should stop imagining things before people start thinking something is wrong with you." The words hung heavy in the air. Mama Edaku, unaware of the tension, simply smiled and admired the bead again before returning inside. But Chisum stood still. Quiet. Hurt. Not because of the accusation, but because of the way Ephelma said it. There was no warmth in her voice. None. The rest of the day passed, but something had shifted. Ephelma spent hours outside, sitting under the shade, touching the bead again and again. Every time someone passed, they stopped to admire her. And she welcomed it. She smiled. She laughed. She soaked in every word of praise like it was something she needed to survive. But Chisum watched closely. And the more she watched, the more uneasy she felt. Because there was something about that bead, something she could not explain. It didn't just shine. It felt wrong. Like it didn't belong in their world. Like it had come from somewhere else. Somewhere dark. And as the sun began to set again, casting long shadows across the ground, Chisum noticed something that made her breath catch. Ephelma's shadow looked thinner than before. Fainter. Like it was slowly fading away. Chisum's chest tightened. This was no ordinary gift. And whatever had given it to her sister was not done yet. By the time evening came, Chisum could no longer ignore the fear growing inside her. It sat heavy in her chest, pressing against her ribs, whispering that something was terribly wrong. She tried to focus on her chores, sweeping, fetching water, helping her mother prepare food, but her eyes kept drifting back to Ephelma. Something about her had changed. Not just the bead, not just the glow of her skin. It was deeper than that. Ephelma moved differently now, slower but more deliberate, like someone who was aware of being watched and enjoyed it. Her laughter sounded the same, but it didn't feel the same. It lacked warmth. It felt empty, like an echo instead of something real. And then there was her shadow. As the sun began to set, stretching everything into long, dark shapes across the ground, Chisum saw it clearly. Ephelma's shadow was wrong. It clung to her feet like it was struggling to stay. Thin, weak, fading at the edges as if the earth itself was slowly rejecting it. Chisum stopped walking. Her breath caught in her throat. Shadows were not supposed to look like that. A shadow was supposed to be strong, dark, whole. proof that a person belonged to the world of the living. But Ethelma's looked like it was slipping away. That night, as they prepared to sleep, Chisum felt a quiet determination settle inside her. Fear was still there, strong, but something else had joined it. Resolve. She lay down on her mat, turning her back slightly, pretending to settle into sleep. But her eyes remained open, watching the faint outline of her sister in the darkness. Her heart beat steadily now. Not fast. Not wild. Just ready. If she leaves again, Chisum thought, I will follow her. The idea alone sent a chill through her body. The elder's warnings echoed in her mind. Do not walk in the night. Do not follow what you do not understand. But this was her sister, her twin. The one she had grown up with, laughed with, shared everything with. She could not sit still and pretend everything was fine. Not anymore. The house grew quiet. Mama Adaku's breathing deepened as she fell into sleep. Outside, the night settled fully over Uguma. The moon hid behind thick clouds, leaving the village in heavy darkness. Then it came. That same soft sound. Creak. The door. Chisum's body tensed instantly. She did not move. She did not open her eyes fully. She simply listened. Ethelma rose again. The same careful movements. The same quiet steps. The same silence. As if she had done this many times before. Chisum's chest tightened. So it was true. This was not the first time. The door opened. Closed. Silence returned. But this time, Chisum did not stay where she was. She counted slowly in her mind. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then she sat up. Her legs felt weak for a moment, but she forced herself to stand. She didn't wear shoes. They would make noise. She didn't carry a lamp. Light would expose her. She stepped carefully toward the door, her heart now pounding louder with each step. When she reached it, she paused. Just for a second. A final chance to turn back. To pretend she knew nothing. To stay safe. But then she thought of her sister's shadow. Fading. Disappearing. And she knew. If she did nothing, she might lose her. Chisum opened the door quietly and stepped into the night. The air was cold. Still. Watching. Ahead of her, she could see a faint figure moving quickly toward the edge of the village. Ethelma. Without hesitation now, Chisum followed. And with that single step beyond the safety of her home, she crossed into something far deeper than curiosity. Something older than the village. Something the elders had always warned about. The night. And whatever lived inside it. The night air felt different the moment Chisum stepped outside. It was colder than she expected, wrapping around her skin like a warning. The familiar paths of Uguma, so lively during the day, now lay silent and empty. Even the usual sounds of insects seemed distant, as if they too were holding their breath. Ahead of her, she saw Ethelma, a faint moving shape in the darkness. Walking quickly, purposefully. Not once did she look back. Chisum swallowed hard and followed, placing each step carefully on the red earth. Her bare feet made no sound, but to her, every movement felt loud. Every breath felt too heavy. Stay quiet, she told herself. Stay close. They moved past the last row of houses, past the familiar compounds. And then, they reached the edge of the village. Chisum slowed down. Her heart began to pound harder. because standing before her was the place everyone feared, the woods. By day, the forest was already unsettling. Thick trees, tangled roots, shadows that lingered too long. But at night, it became something else entirely. The elders spoke of it in low voices, always careful not to say too much. They said the woods were older than the village itself, that something lived there long before Uguma was built, something that did not belong to the world of the living. No one entered it after dark. No one. Not even the bravest hunters. But Ifilma did not hesitate. She walked straight into the trees. Chisum stood frozen at the edge. Every part of her body screamed at her to stop, to turn back, to run home and forget everything she had seen. But then she remembered the shadow, fading, weak, disappearing. Her jaw tightened, and slowly, she stepped forward into the woods. The change was immediate. The air grew heavy, thick against her lungs. The ground beneath her feet softened, damp and uneven. Roots twisted across her path like traps waiting to catch her. The darkness here was not normal. It felt alive, pressing in from every side. The only light came from small openings in the leaves above, where a few stubborn stars peeked through. Chisum's eyes strained to keep Ifilma in sight. She moved deeper, and deeper, and deeper, until the sounds of the village were gone completely. No voices, no animals, no wind, nothing. Just silence. A deep, unnatural silence that made her ears ring. Chisum's breathing grew uneven. Her legs trembled. But she kept going. Because Ifilma kept going. As if she knew exactly where she was heading. As if this path was familiar. That thought sent a fresh wave of fear through Chisum. How many times has she done this? She wondered. Then suddenly, Ifilma slowed down. Chisum quickly ducked behind a large tree, pressing her back against the rough bark. And that was when she saw it. A light. Not moonlight. Not fire. Something else. It glowed ahead in the distance, a strange green light, soft but unnatural. It pulsed faintly, like something breathing. Chisum's heart began to race again. She leaned slightly to the side, peering past the tree. The light came from a small clearing in the middle of the woods. Ifilma stepped into it. Without fear. Without hesitation. As if she had been expected. Chisum hesitated for a moment. Every instinct told her to stay hidden. But she needed to see. She needed to know. So slowly, carefully, she moved closer. Each step lighter than the last. Until she reached the edge of the clearing. She crouched low behind another tree, gripping its trunk tightly. Then she looked. And what she saw made her blood run cold. Because Ifilma was not alone. And whatever stood in that glowing light was not human. Chisum pressed her body tightly against the tree, afraid that even the sound of her breathing might give her away. Her fingers dug into the rough bark as she slowly leaned forward, just enough to see. The clearing was small, surrounded by tall, unmoving trees. But at its center, that strange green light glowed brighter now, casting long, trembling shadows across the ground. And standing inside that light were three figures. Chisum's breath caught. They were tall. Too tall. Their bodies were thin, almost stretched, as if they did not belong to the shape they carried. Their skin was pale, unnaturally pale, like something that had never felt the warmth of the sun. It looked dry, almost cracked, like old bone. They wore garments woven from leaves, but not ordinary leaves. These shimmered faintly, as though something silver had been spun through them. The clothes moved even when there was no wind. And then Chisum noticed something that made her heart pound even harder. Their feet did not touch the ground. They hovered slightly above it. Not floating high, but just enough to be wrong. Just enough to remind you. They were not like anything she had ever seen before. Ephelma stood before them, smiling. That same eager, hungry smile Chisum had seen earlier in the day. But here, in this place, it looked different. It looked desperate, as if she needed whatever they had to offer, as if she could not walk away. One of the figures stepped forward, the tallest of them. Its movements were slow, unnatural, like a puppet guided by invisible strings. In its hand, it held something. A wrapper. Fine silk, shining even in that eerie green light. It looked soft, rich, more beautiful than anything sold in the Uguma market. "For you, beautiful one," it said. The voice made Chisum's skin crawl. It did not sound human. It sounded like dry leaves scraping against stone, layered with something deeper, something hollow. Ephelma's eyes widened. She reached out immediately, taking the wrapper without hesitation. Her fingers trembled, not with fear, but with excitement. "What do I give you today?" she asked. Her voice was soft, eager, like someone used to this exchange. Chisum's heart dropped. Today? This was not new. This had been happening. Again and again. The creature smiled. A slow, stretching movement that did not reach its eyes. "Just a small piece," it said. "A small piece of your heart's warmth." It raised its long, pale hand and reached toward Ephelma's chest. Chisum wanted to scream, to run out and stop it. But her body refused to move. Fear held her in place like chains. The creature's hand touched Ephelma lightly. And then, it happened. A faint glow appeared at Ephelma's chest. Soft at first, then brighter. Like a tiny light trapped inside her body. Slowly, painfully slowly, that light began to pull away, drifting out of her, floating toward the creature's hand like smoke. Ephelma gasped slightly. Her body sagged for a moment. Her face lost its glow. For that brief second, she looked tired, empty, almost old. Chisum's eyes filled with tears. That's her, she thought. That's part of her. The light disappeared into the creature's hand. Gone. Just like that. And then, Ephelma straightened. Her smile returned. Bright. Carefree. As if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't just lost something she could never get back. She looked down at the wrapper, running her hands over it with satisfaction. "It's beautiful," she whispered. The creature tilted its head slightly, watching her, studying her, waiting. From her hiding place, Chisum shook silently. Now she understood. The bead, the glow, the change in her sister. These were not gifts. They were payments. And with every gift Ephelma received, she was losing something far more valuable. Something invisible. Something human. And the worst part? She didn't even realize it. Chisum tightened her grip on the tree. Her fear had grown into something deeper now. Something sharper. Because if this continued, there would come a time when there would be nothing left of Ephelma to take. And yet, The creatures were not done with her. Not even close. The clearing felt heavier now. Chisum stayed hidden behind the tree, her body frozen in place, eyes locked on what was happening before her. The strange green glow pulsed softly, like a living heartbeat buried inside the forest. Ephelma stood in the center of it all, holding the silk wrapper tightly against her chest. Her face still carried that bright, satisfied smile, but Chisum could see it now. It wasn't real. It was forced, like something trying to replace what had been taken. The three pale figures remained still, watching her with patient, unreadable expressions. They did not blink. They did not shift. They simply waited, as though time meant nothing to them. Then the tallest one moved again. Slowly. Deliberately. It raised its hand. And in that hand, something appeared. At first, Chisum thought she was imagining it. But as the glow brightened, she saw it clearly. A crown. Gold. Perfectly shaped. It floated slightly above the creature's palm, turning gently in the air as if it were alive. Every surface of it shimmered with a strange light that did not come from the moon or fire. It looked too perfect, too clean, like something not made by human hands. Ephelma's breath caught. Her eyes widened instantly. Chisum saw it immediately. The hunger. The desire. The way her sister leaned forward without thinking. "That's it," Ephelma whispered. Her voice was soft, but trembling. "That's what I want." The creature tilted its head. "Tomorrow night," it said, voice dragging like dry wind through trees, "we bring you the golden crown, the most beautiful thing ever made. Kings will kneel when they see you." Ephelma's lips parted slightly. Her chest rose quickly. "Yes," she said immediately. "Bring it. I will come." There was no hesitation. No doubt. No fear. Only need. Chisum's stomach twisted violently. She had seen many things that night. But this felt worse. Because it wasn't just about beauty anymore. It was about surrender. The tall figure stepped closer to Iphelmal. The crown floated between them now, spinning slowly. "But," it said softly, "for the crown, the price is higher." Ephelma didn't step back. She didn't even blink. "What price?" she asked. The creature's smile widened. Too wide. Unnatural. "We will take all of it." A pause. The forest seemed to lean in. "Your shadow. Your warmth. And everything left of your human soul." Chisum felt her blood turn cold. Everything. Not just a part. Not just a piece. Everything. Ephelma was silent for a moment. For the first time, Chisum saw something flicker across her face. A pause. A thought. A chance to stop. To question. To run. Chisum held her breath. "Please, think." But then it was gone. The hunger returned. Stronger than before. "I agree," Ephelma said. Just like that. No shaking. No fear. No looking back. "I will come tomorrow." The creature's smile deepened. It lowered the crown slightly, as if sealing an invisible promise. "Then it is done." The green light around them pulsed once, twice, then steadied, as if something had just been locked into place. Something irreversible. Chisum's hands trembled violently. Her mind screamed at her to move, to run, to do something, anything. But her body felt stuck in place. Because she understood now. This wasn't just greed. This was a deal. a trade being made piece by piece. And Ephelma was running out of pieces. The creatures began to fade slightly into the light, their forms becoming less solid, as if satisfied for now. The crown remained floating in their hands, glowing brighter than anything else in the clearing. A promise. A trap. A future waiting to be paid for. Ephelma turned slowly, holding the silk wrapper tightly. She looked almost peaceful now, like someone who had just been promised everything she ever wanted. And without another word, she walked out of the clearing, back toward the village, back toward home. Chisum stayed behind the tree long after the forest fell silent again. Her heart was beating so loudly she thought it might give her away. But she didn't move. She couldn't, because one truth now sat heavily inside her chest. Tomorrow night, her sister would return. And this time, there would be no warning left to ignore. Chisum did not remember how she got back home. The journey through the forest, the return through the silent paths of Uguma, even the cold ground beneath her feet, all of it felt distant, like a dream she had not fully woken from. Her mind was still trapped in that glowing clearing, replaying everything she had seen. The crown. The creatures. The way Ephelma said yes without hesitation. By the time she reached the compound, the sky was beginning to lighten at the edges. A thin, gray morning spread across the village, but Chisum's world still felt dark. She slipped inside quietly. Her hands were shaking. Her chest felt tight. She lay on her mat and stared at the roof, but sleep did not come. Instead, tears gathered in her eyes and slid down silently into the cloth beneath her cheek. "I have to stop her," she whispered to herself. "I have to stop her before it's too late." But even as she said it, she didn't know how. Morning arrived too quickly. Uguma woke as if nothing had happened. Roosters crowed. Doors opened. People greeted each other with ease, unaware of the storm brewing in the heart of one household. Ephelma stepped outside later that morning. Calm. Beautiful. Still carrying the silk wrapper like it meant nothing more than decoration. But Chisum saw her differently now. Every movement felt heavier. Every smile felt borrowed. Every step felt like something slipping away. Chisum waited until her mother was busy before approaching. "Ephelma," she said quietly. Ephelma didn't look at her immediately. She adjusted her wrapper, uninterested. "We need to talk," Chisum continued. That finally made her turn. Her expression was already guarded. "What now?" she asked. Chisum swallowed hard. Last night still burned inside her memory like fire. "I followed you," she said softly. The air shifted instantly. Ephelma's eyes sharpened. "You what?" Chisum stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I saw everything. The woods, the beings, the crown. I saw what they are doing to you." For a brief moment, something flickered in Ephelma's face. Not fear. Not surprise. Something closer to irritation. Then it hardened. "You followed me?" she repeated slowly. "Yes," Chisum said quickly. "Please listen to me. They are taking from you, piece by piece, your warmth, your life. I saw it leave your body." Ephelma stared at her. Long. Cold. Then she laughed. A short, sharp sound. "You are jealous," she said. Chisum shook her head quickly. "No, I'm trying to save you." But Ephelma stepped closer now, her voice dropping. "You followed me into the night like a thief," she said. "And now you come here with stories about shadows and spirits?" Chisum's eyes filled with urgency. "It is real." Ephelma's expression twisted. "You are plain," she said harshly. You are invisible. No one gives you anything. So now you invent things about me to feel important. The words hit harder than anything Chisum had expected. She flinched slightly, but she didn't step back. Please, she whispered. Tonight, they will take everything. Your shadow, your soul. You cannot go back. For a moment, silence hung between them. Heavy, fragile. Then Ifilma's face went completely cold. If you try to stop me again, she said slowly, I will tell Mama you are going mad. Chisum froze. Ifilma turned away immediately. Stay away from me. And just like that, she walked off. Chisum stood alone in the middle of the compound. The morning sun warmed the ground, but she felt nothing. No comfort. No relief. Only helplessness. Her own mother would not believe her. Her sister would not listen. And the creatures in the woods were coming back tonight. She wiped her face quickly with the back of her hand, breathing unevenly. Talking was not enough. Warning was not enough. Begging was not enough. She needed something else. Something stronger. Something final. Because if Ifilma went back into those woods again, there might be nothing left to save. Chisum stood in silence long after Ifilma had walked away. The compound felt too bright, too normal for what was happening inside her mind. Women were already sweeping nearby houses. Children laughed in the distance. Life in Uguma continued as if nothing strange existed beyond its edges. But Chisum knew better now. She had seen it. She could not unsee it. And the worst part was not even the creatures or the glowing clearing. It was her sister's face. The way Ifilma had looked at her, like she was nothing. Like truth itself had no value if it did not match what she wanted to believe. Chisum slowly walked inside the house. Her steps were quiet, careful. Her mind was racing, but her body felt strangely calm, like something inside her had already accepted that there was no time left for hesitation. She sat down near the corner of the room where cooking items were kept. Her eyes moved slowly across the small space, searching without knowing what she was looking for. Then she saw it. A small woven bag. White salt. She stared at it for a long moment. Something stirred in her memory, faint, distant, like a voice carried by wind. Her grandmother, sitting by the fire, speaking in a soft, steady tone. There are things in this world, she had said, that do not belong to light, and there are things that can break them. Chisum remembered leaning closer as a child, listening carefully. What breaks them? She had asked. Her grandmother had smiled. Pure salt, she had answered, mixed with clean water from the ground. It washes away darkness that tries to hide in beauty. At the time, it had sounded like a story. A comforting tale meant to make children feel safe at night. But now, Chisum wasn't so sure it was just a story. She reached for the salt slowly. Her fingers touched the bag as if it might disappear if she moved too quickly. What else do I have? She whispered. Nothing. No one believed her. No one would help her. If she failed tonight, Ifilma would walk into that forest again, and this time she would not come back the same. Or at all. Chisum stood up quickly. Her decision was made. She found a small wooden bowl and cleaned it carefully, wiping out dust and old residue. Then she stepped outside and walked toward the well at the edge of the village. The well was deep, cold. Still, people said it was the oldest water source in Uguma, water that came from deep underground, untouched by surface heat. She lowered the rope and bucket slowly, listening as it descended into darkness. Splash! When she pulled it back up, the water shimmered faintly in the early light. Clean.
Ure.
She carried it back carefully, holding it with both hands. No spills. No mistakes. Inside the house, she poured the salt into the bowl. The white grains disappeared into the water as she stirred with her fingers. For a moment, nothing happened. Then she paused and whispered softly, "Please, let this be true." As evening approached, Uguma grew quieter. The sun lowered behind the trees, casting long shadows across the red earth. The same calm returned as always. But for Chisum, nothing felt calm anymore. She hid the bowl carefully under her mat. Her hands were still shaking, but her mind was steady now. If Ephelma left tonight, she would follow. If the creatures returned, she would face them. If no one believed her, she would still go. Because she could not lose her sister twice. Not to beauty. Not to greed. Not to something that fed on darkness in exchange for gifts. Outside, the wind began to rise gently through the trees. And somewhere deep in Uguma, night was preparing to return. The forest did not feel like the first time anymore. This time, it felt like it was waiting. As Chisum stepped past the edge of the village, the familiar sounds of Uguma disappeared behind her completely. No voices, no movement, no life. Only the soft crunch of earth beneath her feet and the slow, uneven rhythm of her breathing. Ahead, Ephelma moved quickly. Too quickly. Like someone being pulled forward by something unseen. Chisum followed at a distance, keeping low, careful not to break branches or disturb the ground. The bowl of salt water trembled slightly in her hands, but she tightened her grip every time it threatened to spill. "Not now," she whispered to herself. "Not yet." The deeper they went, the heavier the air became. The trees grew taller, their branches twisting above like knotted fingers. The darkness thickened, pressing against Chisum's skin, making every step feel harder than the last. Then, the green glow appeared. Faint at first, then stronger. Chisum slowed down. Her heart began to race. She knew this place. The clearing. The same unnatural light pulsing between the trees like a hidden heartbeat. Ephelma stepped into it without hesitation. And stopped. Chisum crouched behind a thick tree, her breath shallow. The three figures were already there. Waiting. The same tall, pale beings she had seen before. Motionless. Watching. Their presence filled the clearing like a pressure that made the air feel too tight to breathe. And above them, the crown. It floated slowly in the air, glowing with a deep golden light that seemed almost alive. It turned gently, as if it were searching for the right head to belong to. Ephelma stepped forward. Her voice was steady. "I am ready." The tallest creature tilted its head. "Then come," it said softly. Ephelma moved closer. Step by step. Closer to the crown. Closer to the creatures. Closer to the end of something she could not yet understand. Chisum's hands shook violently. This was it. If she waited any longer, it would be too late. She stood up. The sound of her movement broke the silence. Ephelma froze. The creatures turned slightly. Slowly. All attention shifted toward the tree line. "Stop!" Chisum shouted. Her voice echoed through the clearing. Ephelma spun around immediately. Her eyes widened in shock. "You followed me again?" she said sharply. Chisum stepped forward, holding the bowl tightly. "I told you," she said breathlessly. "They are taking everything from you." The creatures remained still, but the air around them changed, colder, sharper. "Go back," one of them said. Its voice was low, dragging like dead leaves. "She chose this." Chisum shook her head. No, she said firmly. She didn't understand what she was choosing. Ethelma's face tightened. You are ruining everything, she snapped. Chisum looked at her sister directly. Ethelma, please, look at yourself. Look at your shadow. For a moment, Ethelma hesitated. Just a flicker. Her eyes dropped briefly to the ground, and Chisum saw it. The shadow. Thin. Barely there. Almost gone. That was all she needed. Chisum ran forward. The creatures moved instantly. One reached for her arm. Another stepped into her path. But she was faster. She twisted, dodged, and slipped through them with desperate strength, holding the bowl high above her head. No! She screamed. And she threw the salt water. The moment it left her hands, the clearing erupted. The water hit the ground and spread instantly, glowing faintly as it touched the air. The creatures reacted violently. A sound tore through the forest, not a scream, but something worse. Something broken and unnatural. The green light shattered. The crown dropped from the air. Ethelma staggered backward. And everything began to change. The forest no longer felt like a place of danger. It felt empty. Not peaceful in a comforting way, but quiet in a way that carried weight. The kind of silence that comes after something terrible has ended, when the world is trying to decide what it has become. Ethelma still knelt on the ground, her hands trembling as they pressed into the cold soil. Her breathing was uneven, broken between small gasps and silent sobs. The tears on her face had not stopped falling, but now they came without panic, only realization. Chisum stayed beside her. Her arm remained around her sister's shoulders, steady and firm, as if letting go would mean losing her all over again. For a long time, neither of them spoke. There was nothing to say yet. Only the truth that had finally settled into the space between them. Ethelma slowly lifted her head. Her eyes were red, tired, and no longer filled with that distant hunger Chisum had seen before. The brightness that once made people stop and stare was gone, but so was the emptiness that had replaced it. Now she looked human. Just a girl. A frightened, shaken girl who had been pulled too close to something she never understood. I can still feel it, Ethelma whispered. Chisum turned slightly toward her. Feel what? Ethelma hesitated, her hand moving instinctively to her chest. Like something was inside me, pulling me forward, she said quietly, making me want more all the time. Even when I was happy, it told me I wasn't enough. Chisum listened without interrupting. I thought it was me, Ethelma continued. I thought I was just meant to be more beautiful, more special. But it was never me, was it? Chisum shook her head slowly. No, she said gently. It wasn't you. Ethelma let out a shaky breath. Then she broke down again. This time, not in fear, but in grief. For everything she had almost lost. For everything she had already lost without knowing. Chisum pulled her closer. You're still here, she repeated softly. That's what matters. After a while, Ethelma's breathing began to calm. The shaking reduced. The panic slowly faded into exhaustion. The forest around them remained still, as if acknowledging that something irreversible had ended. Ethelma leaned lightly against Chisum's shoulder. I treated you badly, she said suddenly. Chisum did not respond immediately. I know, Ethelma added quickly. I said things I didn't mean. I pushed you away when you were trying to help me. Chisum looked at her for a moment. There was pain there, but also understanding. I wasn't trying to win against you, Chisum said quietly. I was trying to bring you back. Ethelma closed her eyes briefly. I know that now. The first light of morning began to creep through the trees. Soft, gentle. Not the harsh brightness of judgment, but the quiet glow of a new beginning. Chisum stood slowly and helped Ephelma rise with her. Their legs were weak, but they stood together, side by side. For the first time in a long time, without distance between them, they began walking. Not quickly, not fearfully, just steadily. Back toward Uguma, back toward home. As they left the forest behind, Ephelma looked down at her hands once more. No bead, no crown, no silk, nothing left of what had been promised to her. Only herself. She exhaled slowly. I thought beauty would make me whole, she said. Chisum glanced at her. And now? Ephelma looked ahead. Now I know it only made me forget what I already had. Chisum didn't respond immediately. Then she said softly, You don't have to forget anymore. When they finally reached the edge of the village, the sky had turned fully into morning. Uguma was waking up again. The world continued as it always had. But for the two sisters walking back into it, everything had changed. Ephelma looked different now, not in appearance, but in presence. Lighter, stripped of what never belonged to her. And Chisum? For the first time, she was not walking alone beside her sister. She was walking with her. Uguma greeted them like nothing had happened. The roosters crowed as usual. Women swept their compounds. Smoke rose gently from cooking fires. Children ran across the red earth, laughing as if the night had carried no secrets at all. But Chisum and Ephelma knew better now. They walked slowly through the village entrance, side by side. Their clothes were torn, their feet dusty, their bodies exhausted from the night. But something else was different too. Something invisible. Ephelma kept her eyes low at first, unsure of how to face the world again. The confidence that once made her walk like she owned every space around her was gone. In its place was something quieter, something real. Chisum stayed close to her. Not protective in fear anymore, but steady, like an anchor. When they reached home, Mama Edaku was already outside, preparing for the day. At first, she didn't notice them. Then she looked up and froze. Ephelma? She called out, confusion tightening her voice. Chisum? Ephelma stepped forward slightly, but stopped halfway, as if unsure she deserved to be fully seen. Mama Edaku rushed toward them instantly. What happened? She asked, looking between them. Where have you been? Your clothes, your faces. Her words stopped when she noticed Ephelma's expression. Not pride, not brightness, just exhaustion. Human exhaustion. Chisum stepped forward. Mother, she said softly, we went into the forest. Mama Edaku's face changed immediately. The forest? She repeated sharply. At night? Ephelma lowered her head, but she did not deny it. And that silence said everything. For a long moment, Mama Edaku said nothing. Her eyes moved between her daughters slowly, trying to understand what words could not explain. There was fear in her expression, but also something deeper. Relief. Because they were still here. Still breathing. Still hers. Finally, she pulled them both into her arms. Tightly. As if holding them could erase the distance of what had happened. I don't understand what you have gone through, she said quietly, her voice trembling. But I am thankful you came back. Ephelma broke down again. But this time, it was not in panic or confusion. It was release. Days passed. Then weeks. Life in Uguma continued its rhythm, but something inside the household changed. Ephelma no longer rushed to the mirror or waited for praise in the market. The hunger that once drove her attention had faded. People still noticed her beauty, but she no longer leaned into it like before. Instead, she helped her mother. She worked beside Chisum. She listened more than she spoke. And slowly, she began to laugh again. Not the kind of laughter that demanded attention, but the kind that came from peace. Chisum noticed the difference most clearly. Ephelma no longer looked like someone reaching for something far away. She looked present, real, alive, in a way she hadn't been before. One afternoon, as they fetched water together, Ephelma broke the silence. "I used to think I was empty," she said quietly. Chisum glanced at her. "And now?" Ephelma paused. Then she smiled faintly. "Now, I think I was just looking in the wrong places." Chisum said nothing for a moment. Then she nodded. "That's what happens when you stop listening to the wrong voices." Ephelma looked at her sister. For a long time, she just watched her. Then she said softly, "I'm glad you didn't give up on me." Chisum's expression softened. "I almost had no choice," she replied. "You're my sister." That evening, as the sun set over Uguma, the two of them sat outside their home. The sky turned warm with shades of orange and gold. For the first time in a long time, there was no fear in the air. No secrets waiting in the dark. Just silence. Peaceful. Shared. And as the village slowly settled into night, one truth remained clear in their hearts. They had walked through darkness and come back not as who they were before, but as something stronger. Together, time has a way of softening even the deepest memories. In Uguma, life returned fully to its rhythm. The red earth was still the same, the trees still stood tall, and the village still woke each morning with the sound of roosters and moving footsteps. On the surface, everything looked unchanged. But for those who knew the story of Chisum and Ephelma, something had shifted forever. The night of the forest was never spoken about openly, not in detail, not in loud voices, but in quiet moments. Elders would sometimes pause and say, "Some darkness does not come to destroy you. It comes to teach you." And the girls had learned. Ephelma changed first. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but slowly, like a person learning how to breathe again after holding their breath for too long. She stopped chasing attention in the market. She stopped measuring her worth by the way people looked at her. The mirror no longer controlled her mornings. The praise of strangers no longer controlled her heart. At first, people noticed the difference. "She's quieter now," they would say. "She has changed." But over time, they stopped questioning it. Because Ephelma was still Ephelma, just lighter, more grounded, more real. She smiled more often now, not because she wanted to be seen, but because she felt at peace. And that peace did not come from beauty. It came from survival, from understanding, from loss. Chisum, too, was different. She was still quiet, still steady, still the one who noticed what others missed. But something inside her had grown stronger. Confidence, not in appearance, but in knowing her own voice mattered. People who once overlooked her began to see her differently now, not because she had changed physically, but because she no longer carried the same uncertainty in her presence. She walked like someone who had seen the edge of darkness and returned with wisdom instead of fear. One evening, as the sun dipped low over Uguma, casting long golden shadows across the earth, the two sisters sat outside their home. No noise, no rush, just stillness. Ephelma broke the silence first. "I used to think beauty was everything," she said quietly. Chisum listened without interrupting. "I thought if people admired me enough, I would finally feel whole," she continued. but all it did was make me emptier. Chisum picked up a small stone from the ground and turned it in her hand. And now? She asked. Ethelma looked out toward the horizon. Now I know something else, she said. A pause. Then softly, real beauty doesn't take from you. It doesn't demand pieces of your soul. It gives you peace. Chisum nodded slowly. That's how you know it's real. They sat in silence again. Not uncomfortable. Not heavy. Just calm. As night approached, Mama Edaku joined them outside. She looked at her daughters for a long moment, long enough to remember everything they had been through, even without words being spoken. Then she smiled gently. You both came back, she said simply. Chisum looked at her. Yes, she replied. Ethelma added softly. We did. Mama Edaku sat beside them, wrapping an arm around both. And for a long time, they stayed like that. A small family. Whole again. That night, the village of Uguma slept peacefully. No strange lights appeared in the forest. No whispers called from the dark. No shadows moved without owners. Because some lessons do not need to be repeated. And some darkness, once faced and understood, loses its power to return. And so the story of Chisum and Ethelma became more than just a tale told in whispers. It became a reminder that what is given quickly can be taken slowly. That beauty without truth is fragile. And that love, real love, does not leave you in the dark alone. It follows you in and brings you back out again. Then she looked up and froze. Ethelma? She called out, confusion tightening her voice. Chisum? Ethelma stepped forward slightly, but stopped halfway, as if unsure she deserved to be fully seen. Mama Edaku rushed toward them instantly. What happened? She asked, looking between them. Where have you been? Your clothes, your faces. Her words stopped when she noticed Ethelma's expression. Not pride, not brightness, just exhaustion. Human exhaustion. Chisum stepped forward. Mother, she said softly, we went into the forest. Mama Edaku's face changed immediately. The forest? She repeated sharply. At night? Ethelma lowered her head. But she did not deny it. And that silence said everything. For a long moment, Mama Edaku said nothing. Her eyes moved between her daughters slowly, trying to understand what words could not explain. There was fear in her expression, but also something deeper. Relief. Because they were still here. Still breathing. Still hers. Finally, she pulled them both into her arms. Tightly. As if holding them could erase the distance of what had happened. I don't understand what you have gone through, she said quietly, her voice trembling. But I am thankful you came back. Ethelma broke down again. But this time, it was not in panic or confusion. It was release. Days passed. Then weeks. Life in Uguma continued its rhythm, but something inside the household changed. Ethelma no longer rushed to the mirror or waited for praise in the market. The hunger that once drove her attention had faded. People still noticed her beauty, but she no longer leaned into it like before. Instead, she helped her mother. She worked beside Chisum. She listened more than she spoke. And slowly, she began to laugh again. Not the kind of laughter that demanded attention, but the kind that came from peace. Chisum noticed the difference most clearly. Ethelma no longer looked like someone reaching for something far away. She looked present, real, alive in a way she hadn't been before. One afternoon, as they fetched water together, Ethelma broke the silence. I used to think I was empty, she said quietly. Chisum glanced at her. And now? Ethelma paused. Then she smiled faintly. Now I think I was just looking in the wrong places. Chisum said nothing for a moment. Then she nodded. That's what happens when you stop listening to the wrong voices. Ethelma looked at her sister. For a long time, she just watched her. Then she said softly, I'm glad you didn't give up on me. Chisum's expression softened. I almost had no choice, she replied. You're my sister. That evening, as the sun set over Uguma, the two of them sat outside their home. The sky turned warm with shades of orange and gold. For the first time in a long time, there was no fear in the air. No secrets waiting in the dark. Just silence. Peaceful. Shared. And as the village slowly settled into night, one truth remained clear in their hearts. They had walked through darkness and come back not as who they were before, but as something stronger, together.